Hey, it's Tpok, and I'm back in Symphonic Rain. Sorry about no videos the past 2 days. I just kept losing track of time, and I've got a ton of homework. Now that it's not midterms that are coming up, but it's like if you've got the 3 instead of the 2 kind of thing, you know, I don't know. I've got a ton of stuff, so sorry, but dumbfounded, I stood there just watching the umbrella. Of course, umbrellas were sold all over, and sometimes you could see people with raised umbrellas around. But since I arrived here, this might have been the first time I've actually been under one myself. I slowly came to the realization that this umbrella was being held by someone, and turned my head to look. I suspected it was Torta for a second, but that thought was quickly proven wrong. You are...
自己紹介してなかったですね。私の名前はファルシータ。ファルシータ・フォーセット。
Still holding the umbrella, she suddenly inclined her head without changing her expression. Is something the matter?
いえ、歩きながら話しましょうか。
Sure. I still didn't understand how I came to walk together with a strange person under one umbrella. Unlike the sound of the rain hitting the ground, the sound of it hitting the umbrella was surprisingly faint. I'd introduced myself while we were walking. Since then, the two of us hadn't exchanged a word.
どうかしましたか?
No. Since I was holding the umbrella, the girl was currently empty-handed. I didn't do this to impress her or anything. I knew myself well enough to know that I wasn't that kind of person. I merely figured it wouldn't be good etiquette to have someone else hold my umbrella.
こんな風に強引にお誘いしてしまってね。
I cut her off, sorry. She seemed flustered and slowed down her pace. Before she had a chance to come to a complete halt, I continued speaking. Also, this is her song in the background, inciting her to pick up the pace again. No, that's not it. It's really unusual for me to be walking under an umbrella.
そうですか? そういえばそうですね。この町の人はあまり傘を使わないみたいですから。
Yes, but thank you.
いえ、お気になさらずに。
But what were you doing there? I thought you had business at the Scuola.
それは。
She hesitated for a moment, as if it were difficult for her to say.
あなたが少し辛そうな顔をしていたから。
I did?
ええ。それで具合が悪いのかと思って外に出てみたら、雨を見上げているのが見えたので。
Is that so? I readjusted my grip on the umbrella and continued. Thank you for your concern.
いえ。
She lightly turned aside my expression of gratitude and simply bowed her head. But is that really all? Have we perhaps met before somewhere? I changed the subject to shake off my unusual embarrassment. I certainly had the feeling I had heard of her name before. Then again, her gentle demeanor and refined features made her an all-around impressive-looking girl. If I'd actually met her in class, I probably wouldn't have forgotten her. At the very least, it was out of the question that I'd met her at a Fortelle class. Besides that, I couldn't think of any other occasions I could have possibly met her. I just had that feeling, that's all. The girl smiled as I almost apologetically added this. Then she began to laugh humbly.
どこかで会ったことあるかもしれませんよ。
A possibility?
確かじゃないですけど。
What do you mean?
クリスさんが学院の行事にきちんと出ているのなら、お会いしたことはあると思いますよ。
Events, huh? I never actively participated in those. Unless they were compulsory, I almost never attended.
そうなんですか? それでもどこかで見たことはあるかもしれませんね。私、学院で生徒会長をしていたんですよ。今年の春までですけど。
Ah, is that so? Oh, now that you mention it. I had a feeling I'd heard her speak at some event before. I never felt like listening to those speeches, so I'd never really been concerned with who the speaker was. Sorry.
どうして謝るんですか？
Sorry for not being a diligent student.
お気になさらずに。
I wonder how many times that this maid that she'd said what? I wonder how many times this maid that she said those words with such grace of manner. Whoa, okay. I could tell it was second nature to her, and that it came straight from her heart. A lot of children from aristocratic and upper-class families were enrolled in this institute. I suppose I shouldn't have expected anything less from a student council president. Thank you. At that moment, we arrived at the border between the main street and Old Town. My house is in the Old Town. Oh, I just realized we walked all this way without me ever asking which way you had to go.
あ、はい。どうかしました？
No, I just figured that your house might not be in the Old Town, Miss Fawcett.
そんなことないですよ。私もこっちですから。
Oh, I see. She had this air around her that said she wasn't suited to live in a cheap apartment in the Old Town like I do.
どうかしましたか？
No, it's nothing, sorry. It really wasn't something to ask someone you just met. I decided not to touch on it.
そうですか。あ、それとそんなに堅苦しい呼び方じゃなくてパルって呼んでください。
Oops. Fall? I didn't particularly think that I could become close friends with her in the future, but I had no reason to turn down her request. On the other hand, I couldn't afford to be too laid back around her either. I had to watch my manners still.
ええ。
Since our ways home were in the same direction, we were still walking under her umbrella.
クリスさんはポルテール科なんですね。
Since we were students attending the same school, it was only natural for this topic to come up.
すごいです。才能があるんですね。
No, that's not true. I was just lucky. Nothing amazing about it.
本当にそう思ってるんですか？
Of course.
でも珍しいですね。
That was all she said. She didn't tell me whether she thought it was right or wrong for me to think like that.
そういえばクリスさんって3年生ですよね。
Yeah, that's right. How'd you know?
ちょっと前ですけどコンサートホールで演奏していたでしょ。夏の定期演奏会です。
At this institute, regular concerts were held 3 times a year at the end of each period. But considering the large amount of students performing at these concerts, wouldn't it be a bit hard to watch them all? Unless... Paul, are you a Fortellist as well? If that was true, then I think I've said some pretty inconsiderate things just now. But in that case, I also should have at least remembered her face.
いいえ、声楽家です。でもポルテール科の演奏はすべて聞きましたよ。
Were you obligated to?
そういうわけではないんですが、楽しかったですよ。
I was just glad when my part was over personally.
でしょうね。
She sympathized with me, as if she had come to understand me a little from our earlier conversation. I didn't feel too uncomfortable with that. But a vocalist, huh? A silly thought sprang to my mind right then. But she seemed very popular, so I'd be surprised if she hadn't already decided on a partner.
あ、そうだ。クリスさんってもうパートナーは決まってますか？
Just when I decided it was better not to try and ask her, she casually asked me the question. Huh? No, not yet.
よかった。私、実はまだパートナーが決まっていないんです。よかったら今度音を合わせてみませんか？いきなり決めるのは無理だと思いますから、とりあえず一緒に演奏してみる機会があればと思って。
I see. Although I felt it was a little bit too good to be true, I had no particular reason to refuse. We would find out soon enough if we were musically compatible. But are you sure that's all right?
いいんですかって？ こちらからお願いしているんですけど。
Well, if it is alright with you, I would love to. I was in the middle of searching for a partner myself, after all.
やっぱりそうでしたか。あそこにいたので、そんな気がしてたんです。
We ended up at a fork in the road. I'm going this way.
あ、私はあっちですね。
She looks a bit disappointed.
あ、でも家の前まで送りましょうか。ここまで来て濡れるのもちょっと。
Oops. Actually, my house is very close. No worries.
そうですか?
Yeah, regarding what we talked about, when do you want to do it?
今週はちょっと忙しいので、できれば来週からがいいんですが。
Anytime next week?
いえ、ごめんなさい。火曜と木曜だけなんです。あとは日曜日が空いてますけど。
Tuesday or Thursday's fine. I don't really want to come to school on a day off.
クリスさんならそう言うと思ってました。レッスンはどの時間帯にとってます？
Second period, so I'll be free after the morning.
私は1次元目なので、お昼からでいいでしょうか。
Is after lunch fine too?
もちろんです。ならそのくらいの時間に練習室を取っておきますね。場所は。
She inclined her head in thought.
わかりやすく練習室のある廊下の一番奥でどうです？
Ah, sure. But I'm not sure yet if it'll be Tuesday or Thursday.
どちらにしろ練習室にはいますよ。いつもそこで練習してますので。
Impressive.
いえ、私よりもっと練習している人はたくさんいますよ。
Even still, but that's just like you, I suppose.
らしい。
I mean, I guess it wasn't really something you'd normally say to someone you just met. I just had that feeling.
そうですか。
She simply smiled. Well then, see you Tuesday or Thursday.
はい。それではまた。
She gave a graceful bow and turned to leave. Remembering something, I quickly called out to her. Oh,
はい。どうかしましたか?
Thank you very much for sharing your umbrella with me.
いえ、お気になさらずに。
After parting with Fall, I hurried along the road home, which normally took about around 3 minutes walking, and arrived at my apartment. My hair and clothes weren't that wet today.
あ、おかえり。
Since I was out of breath, I took a few breaths before replying. I'm home.
ん？走ってきたの？
For a bit,
へえ、なんかあったの？
I suppose. I just had to explain to her later and stepped into the room.
あれ？今日はタオルで拭かなくてもいいの？
I'm not that wet. I guess I'll have to explain that as well.
ねえねえ、何があったの？
I went over the events of today with a highly interested fairy, as I always did. After my usual interaction with Forney, the day came to an end. A long 5 days had come to an end. I spent my free Saturday in leisure. And today I was just idly killing time as well. The usual life. Well then, it was slightly past 6 o'clock. The letter from Ari would arrive soon.
そろそろだよね。
Forney affirmed, noticing me talking to myself. I'll go check.
はい、いってらっしゃい。
The mailbox was pretty close. In fact, it was located right outside my door. Even so, Forney always saw me off like that. I never showed her the letters from Ari. She badgered me about it at first, but she got off my case when I told her I was too embarrassed to show her. Well, the only reason the letters were on her mind in the first place was because we always performed our ensembles afterward. As expected, the letter had already arrived. I retrieved it from the mailbox and returned to my room. I still had a letter to read and a reply to write, but I could tell from her restlessly fluttering wings that Forney's mind was already on the ensemble. She was really quite simple-minded. Ignoring her, I carefully removed the seal from the envelope and took the letter out. As usual, there was only one sheet of paper inside.
クリス、そちらは今も雨が降っていますか？こちらも珍しくちょっと前に雨が降りました。クリスと同じ気分になれるから、そんな雨の日も少しだけ好きです。さて、唐突なんだけど、パートナーのことでトルタが少し困ってるみたいだったよ。真面目に探す気がなさそうだって手紙には書いてあったけど、クリスらしいね。いつでもちょっとめんどくさそうに後でやるっていうのが小さい頃の口癖だったもんね。言葉遣いは変わったのに中身は全然変わってないってトルタがぼやいてた。でも私はクリスが本当に好きなことに対してはそれなりに真面目だってことを知ってるから大丈夫。パッと考えてみてもそれが音楽しか思いつかないのはやっぱり問題なのかもしれないけどね。話がそれちゃったね。とにかく真面目に探した方がいいんじゃないのかな。それとも私がこの手紙を書いてる頃にはいい人が見つかってその練習でもしてるのかな。それならごめんね。最初に謝っておくね。そうじゃないと子供みたいに今やってるとこだったのにって拗ねるクリスの顔が想像できるから。もし決まっていないのならトルタじゃダメなのかな。私は素人だからよくわからないんだけど、小さい頃からいつも一緒にいるんだから合わせやすいとかそういうのがあるんじゃないかって考えたりしてみました。最終的にはクリスが好きなように決めればいいんだけど、ちょっとおせっかいをしてみたくなったので許してね。ではまた次の手紙で。アリエッタ。
I looked away from the letter and became absorbed in thought for a while. It was hard to deny that partnering with Torta was the best course of action, but I couldn't help but feel apprehensive about that. If there really was no one else, I'd probably have to, but that was not the case. I was invited by Falsita for one, something I would have never expected to happen. Also, there was that girl Lisa who caught my attention. If I told Torta this, she'd probably reprimand me for being so indecisive. Still, I felt like I had to keep some distance from her. Besides, this wasn't something to decide on the spot anyway. I needed a little more time. Was it really such a bad idea to wait a few more days before tackling the issue? There wasn't much time left. Even so, it was still more than a month. What a bother. I knew it was going to keep coming back to haunt me. That was loud, but that was only one way I could think of it right now.
ねえねえ、返事はもう書いたの？
Does it look like I have?
見えないからそう言ってるんじゃない。
Then why don't you tell me to hurry up and write it?
なら早く書きなさい。
Despite having asked her to tell me that myself, I still felt a bit frustrated. I merely intended to correct her. But I wouldn't get through to Forney, even if I explained that to her. Hi. Okay. I answered nonchalantly, and then began preparations to write a reply. I would just talk about something random. I'd write about the whole partnering with Torta thing. I figured she'd just repeat the same thing in her next letter, but I couldn't think about it again when that time came. I just want to put it off a little for now.
ねえ、まだ?
Oops. I'm finishing it up now. The letter comprised of only one sheet of paper, about the same length as Ari's. I put the letter from Ari in the drawer, wondering if she had accumulated about the same amount of paper by now. I then inserted the letter I just wrote into an empty envelope. Seeing that, Forney quickly began doing vocal exercises. I felt tempted to tease her for putting on such an ostentatious display, but I passed on that, figuring Forney might get angry, especially after I had already made her wait. Then, let's begin.
Hi!
And so my usual ensemble with the fairy began, and the day came to an end. And now is it Monday? Lunedi? Monday? Maybe? As usual, I was woken by Forney's voice, and as usual, I prepared for school. Changes had gradually begun to creep in my daily life, which was until last week had still been normal. I might come home a bit later from today onward.
先週もそう言ってなかった?
Well, yeah, because last week I went around looking for a partner. I'm just saying it might get even later this week.
なんでよ?
Come on now, did you really think I was done after I found someone? Still have to practice, so I'll obviously get home later.
それもそうか.
You're quick to agree. I was already prepared for this, for the many complaints, like you're late, and Chris, you idiot.
それ、私の真似のつもり?
Pretty much.
後でひどいよ.
Okay, I'm sorry.
わかればよろしい. まあ、平日に帰りが遅くなるのは仕方ないとして、日曜日にまで練習を入れないようにね.
Why?
クリスのことだから、疲れたとか、もうダメだとか言って、アンサンブルしないかもしれないじゃない。
Is that supposed to be an impression of me?
後でひどいのはやめてね.
And I take it you understand that. Anyway, I can't rule out the possibility, but I'll try to keep some days free.
それならよし.
I wasn't planning on practicing on a free day anyway, though.
まあ、クリスに休みの日にまで練習するつもりもない。
Oops, that's not true.
本当に?
Yes, really. I lied, but anyone would get offended with something like that said straight to their face. I thought I'd brush away the topic for now. Anyway, what I was trying to say was, I think I might get home late, so don't worry about me.
Hi!
Although it didn't happen often, Forney was quick to understand sometimes. Whenever I got irritated or refused to yield no matter what, she'd pull back like she did just now. Outside of that, she was often selfish, and I would say things that drove me up the wall, so I couldn't praise her too much either. Well then, I'm off. I'm gonna end it here, before we go off to Monday. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.